We regret the things we don't do more than the things we do. It's not an uncommon observation and seems particularly apropos just ahead of Valentine's Day. Susan Spencer looks at romance and regret.
Strolling with her partner on the Brooklyn waterfront, writer Deborah Capin looks happy and in love. But she admits to a few romantic regrets along the way.
I can't imagine a single human being alive today who has had at least one relationship who doesn't regret something.
Copaken, now 57, says one of her big regrets goes back to when she was just 22. So tell me the story of the one that got away.
Back in 1989, I was in Jamaica and I met a young man. And after a week together, I felt like I had fallen in love with him.
They briefly had to part ways, he to London to study theater, she to Afghanistan to cover the war. But they soon reunited for 10 romantic days in England.
I thought, this guy's it, I am in love, this is the relationship of my lifetime.
Alas, it was not to be.
He said he was going to come visit me in Paris 2 weeks later. And I was in my apartment waiting around. He never showed up.
What do you mean he never showed up?
He just never showed up.
Back then, of course, there were no cell phones, no internet.
He had a very common name, and it's not like you could find somebody back then with a common name, right?
So he's just gone.
He's gone. He's gone.
How did you react to this?
I mean, how would you react? I was sad. And I was also confused and heartbroken.
Do you think that romantic regret can last a lifetime?
Yes, I mean, we see people in their 80s, in their 90s with these romantic regrets. It sticks with people.
Romantic regret, like all regret, is universal, says Washington, D.C. author Daniel Pink.
Everybody has regrets. I mean, we have evidence from neuroscience, from social psychology, from cognitive science that the only people who truly don't have regrets are 5-year-olds. People with certain kinds of neurodegenerative diseases don't have regrets, and sociopaths don't have regrets. Everybody else has regrets.
For his book on the subject, Pink collected more than 26,000 regrets, many of them from the lovelorn.
So this is the database of the regrets. You see up here.
A vast inventory of unfulfilled love from 134 countries.
Not asking out a high school friend on a date. Look at this, high school.
High school is
53.
53. Yeah.
That's 35 years ago.
That's the most common regret, he says.
Yeah.
Not taking action. I turned down a second chance at a relationship with someone I loved. She's 40. She lives in Maryland.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Oh, here we go. How about this one right here?
Not telling her I loved her.
Exclamation point. 54-year-old man from Wisconsin.
We're interviewing an art critic who thinks that romantic regret is an underlying theme in much great art. But what's your take on that?
I think that it could be. I mean, I think that if it's painting or sculpture or works on paper, it could be another way to make sense of this feeling.
But that's the good thing about it, you know?
Jackson Arn is that art critic. He writes for The New Yorker.
If the premise is that romantic regret is universal, is art the proof of that?
I think art is the proof of that. No matter what else the painting is about, no matter what else the work of art is about, you can almost hear it humming underneath all the other melodies, so to speak.
He says that wistful humming can be heard all over the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where we met for our interview.
Rodin had a PhD in regret, as far as I'm concerned.
And it's not just Rodin. Examples through the ages are in museums all over the world.
It could be Edvard Munch falling in and out of love with an older married woman, and he turned the experience into a whole series of paintings called Love and Pain.
How about Edward Hopper? I mean, I think of those solitary figures, and something has happened there.
That's the thing. Something has happened. Maybe it's sexual, maybe it's romantic.
You also had picked a painting by Kerry James Marshall called Could This Be Love?
Could this be love? That's always the question, isn't it? We are seeing a romantic scene, but we don't know whether they're coming or going. We don't know if they're beginning an affair or if they're ending the affair. It could be love. It could be the end of love.
And you've even gone so far, I think, as to say that love and heartbreak might even be the main reason to make art.
Love has always been a great cause of pain, and art is sometimes the best therapy for it.
For Deborah Capin, the best therapy is what she recommends in her book, Learn from Regret. That's what she did 21 years after her Paris heartbreak, when she finally tracked down the one that got away.
And I wrote an email and I said, hey, are you the same John Doe that stood me up in Paris back in 1989?
You jerk.
And he wrote back pages and pages saying, I did go to Paris. I arrived in Paris. I didn't have the piece of paper with your phone number on it. I ended up staying at a youth hostel, and I never found you again.
Movies have been made about this.
I know.
And Affair to Remember. This is exactly what happened to you.
I was looking up. It was the nearest thing to heaven. You were there. Oh, darling.
I love that movie.
You have a unique perspective on that movie.
Copaken and her old love reunited for lunch on a bench in Central Park. But unlike in the movies, they did not then ride off together into the sunset. Both were already married.
And it's not that I wanted to marry him. It's not that I wanted to blow up two families and, that would have been terrible, right? But it did make me understand what was lacking in my marriage. I realized at that moment that my marriage was faltering and I needed to get out of it.
Which brings us back to that Brooklyn waterfront. Now divorced and 35 years since Paris, Copaken has found true love with someone new, happier perhaps, because of her past regrets. No surprise to author Daniel Pink.
We have this emotion, regret, that makes us feel bad. So why would it be so ubiquitous? And it's because it's useful if we treat it right, and we haven't been treating it right. What we should be doing is looking it in the eye, acknowledging it, thinking about it, using it as data.
You can choose to decide whether you can use that regret as fuel. If you use regret to make changes, positive changes in your life, then regret is the best fuel in the world.